Hey guys, and welcome back to the Fantasy Football Profits. Today we're doing our Week 1 start-sit advice, and that's right, we're going over every player in every game. And so you don't have to sit here for an hour. If you want, you can hop down in the description below, and you can click on the timestamps and jump around to whichever games it is that you want to hear those players about. Of course, we want to say this video is late this week. Every other week we're going to be putting these videos out a lot earlier, so you guys have more time to watch the video ahead of time, to process this information, to ask questions, to go back and forth. Of course, we always say leave a comment down below. We will try to answer it. Of course, we are unable to answer all of them once the season really gets going and gets extremely busy. However, if you are a Patreon subscriber, which we would of course suggest to you guys, you get some premium stats, as well as we will make sure 100% to answer your questions. And so that's something that I think is going to be really important for people this year. But let's move on. I know, Rob, you have some things you want to cover and get out of the way before we can continue talking.
Yeah, it's I want to get into a bunch of information here. I'm excited to talk. The one thing I think is a bit weird is I can't believe it's football season. It just snuck up on us, but I'm really excited for this week. In fact, tonight, excited for the Bears versus the Packers. Can't wait to watch that one. One of the things you need to think about regarding this video is if we don't mention a name in here, then you can assume to sit that person. Another thing, we're kind of using this baseline idea of a 12-team league. That's kind of your standard size. The other thing that's important for you guys to realize that every league is different. The scoring, the rule size, you name it. So you need to take this information, you need to contextualize it and flex it into your specific scoring or settings that your league has. So once again, we're just giving you some guidelines, some baseline things to consider. The other thing we want to say at the beginning here is our start-sit video. It gets easier to start-sit videos once you get a couple weeks in. Right now, I hear a lot of guys talking about strength of schedule, matchups, things like that. They go back to last year, and we did the same thing. We went back to last year. We are projecting a little bit there, but I think you need to be careful of putting too much emphasis in last year's rankings and strength of schedule, and here's why. It used to take in football 3 to 5 years maybe to turn a team around, but that's changed now. There's a lot more parity in the league. Prime example, that's a few years ago, the Rams were last in the NFL, scoring 14 points per game, right? And then the very next year, get a new head coach, and they end up going all the way to first in the NFL in points scored, 30. So you just see that fluctuation so more dramatic nowadays. It makes it harder to go back. So you really need like 2 to 3 weeks before you see some real trends solidifying, in terms of like pass defense, rush defense, things like that. But just some things to consider there.
All right.
Let's get into the first game. Start with game number 1, the Titans versus the Browns. Normally it sounds like a boring game, but I don't know about you. I'm excited to see what the Browns are going to do this year. They're a different team. I hope if you're Browns fans out there, you can finally turn it around and this is your year. Let's start with the quarterback. Start with Marcus Mariota. He's really struggled the last 2 years. He doesn't have great weapons. Now he's getting Walker back. That's a good tight end, one of his favorite targets. I think that's going to help quite a bit. But there's so many question marks with that offense. And they're playing on the road against a much improved Browns team and Browns defense. The Titans are going to try to win games this year playing defense and running the ball with Derrick Henry. Everything points, there's got to be better options out there at quarterback. I would sit Marcus Mariota if you have him. I doubt that you even do, but sit the guy. Baker Mayfield. Now let's look at the downside of this matchup for Baker Mayfield. One, he's playing the Titans defense that last year was good against the pass. They finished 6th in the NFL in pass defense and 3rd in the least amount of points allowed at 18.9 per game. Their defense was pretty solid there. The positive, in the offseason, they added Odell Beckham to go with Landry, a developing tight end, David Njoku. They got last year rookie stud running back Chubb, but they've got a lot of good weapons there for him there, so that's the positive side of it.
They also added wide receiver Taywan Taylor just to add some depth as well.
Yeah, coming, of course, from the Titans.
Tennessee.
Yeah. So you look at Baker last year, he finished strong near the end there. In fact, he ended up with the best ever rookie quarterback season. So, he had a phenomenal year. Everything was trending for this guy. And I think he's looked really good in the preseason. So everything's trending up. I think that he's playing at home. I think he's a guy that you can start. I think it's a great matchup for him. And so for me, I think you start Baker Mayfield. But I think we slot him around the 10 to 12 quarterback range for us for this week. So play the guy. He's not top 10. He's right outside of there, but he can be started. Let's go to running backs. We'll start with Nick Chubb. So they traded Duke Johnson away. Hunt suspended the first 8 games. This guy's going to be the bell cow. He's probably going to be even when Hunt comes back. But early on, you can trust his usage, his snaps. He's going to be a clear leader in carries. He's going to receive more targets than he did last year. You need to start him against a Titans team that was last year in the middle of the pack in terms of run defense. Chubb is a must-start running back 1, top 10 this week. Gotta love that guy if you have him. Let's look at Derrick Henry. Had a calf injury, missed some time. But he said he's ready to go for week 1 there. I think he's going to play against the Browns there. I think we can trust him in this one. He's going to suit up and be fine. Now they're playing the Browns, who last year they're bad against the run. They allowed 135 rushing yards per game. That was 28th in the NFL. But they should improve those numbers. They added Oliver Vernon, defensive tackle Sheldon Richardson, so I think that D-line is going to improve there. Like I said earlier, though, the Titans are committed to running the ball with Derrick Henry and feeding him early and often. So I think for me, he's a guy that you can play. I do have concerns, though, with him. You look at Derrick Henry last year, he really had like a tale of 2 seasons. The first 12 games were not good at all. Last 4 games, he exploded. So who's going to show up this year? What can we expect from Derrick Henry? I need to see some consistency before I consider him a high-end running back too, but I would start him this week as what I would call a low-end running back too. And definitely in standards, he's safer than PPR leagues. He drops off a little bit in PPRs. So get Dion Lewis. Dion Lewis is going to have some PPR value as a flex play in some matchups later this year. Okay, they're going to need to throw a lot in this game. I imagine they might fall behind. They may end up chasing the Browns a little bit there, but he could be hit or miss. And so I think for me, we need to see a snap count, his usage. We need to see how Marcus Mariota does in that offense. So right now, even though Dion Lewis could have PPR value later on as a flex play in the year, I would sit him week 1. Odell Beckham. Coach Freddie Kitchen said that Odell Beckham's hip is ready to go week 1 against the Titans. This is not a great matchup for Odell per se, but when he's healthy, he's a must-start wide receiver 1 every week. It doesn't matter who he's playing. You start Odell Beckham, right? Like, you don't even think about that.
Seems pretty obvious to me.
Yeah. Jarvis Landry goes from being the team's number 1 to the team's number 2. I think it's going to lessen the pressure of his matchups. He won't see as many good corners. He's not going to see double teams. That should increase his yards after catch, but it will decrease his targets. Just the natural progression of that, obviously. Now, I think his style of play, I think he's a PPR stud if you look at the way he's been his first few years in the league, but I think he loses value in standard leagues due to lower touchdowns and lower yards. I would start as a solid wide receiver 2 in PPR leagues, and he's a low-end wide receiver 3 in standards. Corey Davis, former first-round pick, has talent. Some people would say he's disappointed. I think some of that's quarterback play. You can't blame him necessarily for some of the bad quarterback play they've had there. They're going to need somebody to be their go-to guy, and Corey's going to be that guy. He has talent, and in this game they need to throw to keep pace with what should be a potent Browns offense. He will most likely face top corner Ward in this game. That's what we anticipate, that he'll see a lot of Ward in that one. So I think that lowers his value a little bit. I would start him as a wide receiver 3 with a limited floor, with a somewhat safe floor but a limited ceiling in this one. I would sit all their wide receivers. As far as tight ends go, I got David Njoku. He's a tight end with a high ceiling with lower floor. Titans did give up some points last year to tight ends. Hopefully that trend will carry over. I think you need to start David Njoku. If no other reason, the tight end position is just very thin. It's just hard to find a lot of tight ends out there. We saw in the leagues where we drafted, you want to get top 5 or 6 after that. There's so many question marks. Delaney Walker's back. That was Marcus Mariota's more really favorite target if you look at whatnot. I think coming back, the fact that position is thin, I think you got to start Delaney Walker. That's kind of a no-brainer in this one. Start him. As far as kickers go, the Browns have had some kicking woes recently, last couple of years. They brought in rookie kicker Austin Seibert. Many rookie kickers have struggled in the league there. I think in this offense, he can end up being a sleeper and a steal, but in week 1, you need to sit this guy. We need to know exactly what he's going to do and what that offense is going to do there. Titans play suck up on injured reserve Wednesday inside veteran Cairo Santos, but I would sit him this week. Once again, that offense just has too many issues there to trust Cairo Santos. As far as defense go, Titans D looked very good last year, but a good defense doesn't always necessarily translate to a good fantasy defense. So I think last year, they finished top 3 in scoring and points allowed defensively, but we're 13th in fantasy points scoring. So not a great fantasy defense. I think they're better options. I would sit them. And the Browns defense on paper, that Browns defense looks like it could be dangerous, but what's on paper and in reality, who knows? So I think with so many question marks with Marcus Mariota, what's going on with that Titans offense, I think could start the Browns defense. I think they have a high ceiling, but they are less reliable than some other defensive starts out there. Boom. Anything you want to add?
No, let's get to it. I got to talk about the Ravens versus the Dolphins. All right, guys, so the big question mark right here, probably everyone's wondering, is about Lamar Jackson. And the first thing I'm going to say is I don't get the hype. People are loving Lamar Jackson. I thought it was just in 1 draft, and then in 2 drafts, suddenly 3 drafts, he's getting drafted over guys like Carson Wentz. I don't understand where this is coming from, but especially this week is the week where not only last season did he finish 29th in fantasy points per game or whatever, or finish 29th in total fantasy points. It wasn't a great year for him, and they added virtually 0 weapons in that offense and made no improvements to their passing game. Of course, they added Mark Ingram, but I highly doubt that's going to suddenly make the difference and bump him into some great fantasy status. I think you got to sit Lamar Jackson in a game like this, and we're going to talk about why later on, because I think part of it is that it's going to be a pretty low-scoring affair. I could be wrong. On the other side, what about Ryan Fitzpatrick? He had a great season last season. In fact, he finished 3rd in fantasy points per dropback. Those numbers were very good, but he goes from a Tampa Bay offense that's probably top 5 in the NFL as far as passing targets goes, with O.J. Howard and Evans and all those guys there, to probably bottom 5 in the NFL. The Dolphins just do not have much to work with. I would sit both quarterbacks in this game for sure. We come on to the running backs now. I think you got to play Mark Ingram. You got to start him in a standard league specifically. He's running behind the 10th best run blocking offensive line in the NFL, at least according to last season, and I would expect that to be very similar to this year. I think he's going to see an uptick in his targets and his touches and his carries, going from behind Alvin Kamara in that Saints offense to the starter in Baltimore. And yes, he does seem to be the clear #1 guy, at least at this point. However, there's a lot of fairly talented backups, and so he does have a ceiling. I don't think he's a guy who's going to get 20, 25 targets, but I definitely see this guy getting about 15 touches in that game. So I think you got to start him, but have your expectations somewhat low. On the other side, we go from a standard league stud in Mark Ingram to more of a PPR guy, Kenyon Drake. So we've got this Drake-Balazs situation. The first thing I'm going to say is don't play Balazs. He's really been dropping in our rankings quite a bit from the poor preseason that he had to actually positive news about Kenyon Drake. So I want to read this for you. Just 2 days ago, Coach Brian Flores said, "I think he's both physically and mentally ready. This is a guy who has so much talent. In fact, he says he has as much talent as we have on our team. He's fast, he's physical, he's explosive. He makes lots of plays, and here's the best part. I said, we're looking to get him a lot of touches this week." Not only this season, but specifically this week. And so I think this is a guy that you can play as a low-end running back too, or a definite flex play, especially in PPR leagues. That's about all the good news I have for this game. Now we get on to the interesting wide receiver situations that these teams have. For starters, we go to the Browns. Marquez Brown, or Hollywood Brown, whatever you want to call him, he had a bad preseason and really does not seem to be, things don't seem to be looking very good for him, as well as I don't like Lamar Jackson as a quarterback, especially in the passing game. Is a good mobile quarterback, but with 2 muffed punts and 1 drop target in the last preseason game, I think you're going to have to not play Marquez Hollywood Brown this game. In fact, Willie Snead, I believe, to be the #1 wide receiver in that Baltimore offense. However, he isn't great. I don't think this is a lovely situation. And in week 1, before we see what Willie Snead can do, I don't think that you can play him, although he might be maybe a deep wide receiver to round out your bench later on. As far as the Dolphins goes, Devontae Parker still seems to be the #1 wide receiver in that offense. However, he's been quite a major letdown the last few seasons. In fact, in the last 2 years, he has combined for just 2 receiving touchdowns. Even with a couple of games missed due to injury, that number is far too low. I don't think that you can start Devontae Parker. And I know that some people are saying, hey, I like Preston Williams, I like Jakeem Grant, they've got high upside. High upside's great, they're on our radar, but don't start them. We don't know what we're getting with them, and they're very extremely unproven. As far as the tight end position goes, I think you got to play Mark Andrews. As you talked about earlier, there's just not a lot of talent at the tight end position, and Mark Andrews has some talent. He's a low-end start, and he happens to be Lamar Jackson's #1 target, who in fact led all tight ends last season in passer rating generated when targeted. I think that you should sit tight end Mike Gesicki. He was bad last season. I think he's going to be bad this year. Of course, you got to start Justin Tucker. I think he is the best leg in the NFL. I don't know if he's necessarily the best fantasy kicker, but he's got to be at least top 5. You got to start him. I think you should sit kicker Jason Sanders. He is in a bad offense going against a tough defense. That is a bad matchup. Of course, you're going to start the Ravens. I imagine they're going to absolutely beat up on that Dolphins offense, and I think they could get some real fantasy points. And you should you should sit the Dolphins defense. As much as I'm not a huge fan of that Ravens offense, they're conservative in their run first. They're not going to give up a lot of fantasy points.
Let's get to the Falcons versus the Vikings there. Let's start with Matt Ryan. Okay, versus the Vikings on the road. Vikings last year were 3rd in pass defense, very good. They did slip a little bit as far as points allowed, but that defense is set for top honors again this year. The Vikings defense, I would not be surprised if them finish top 5 in the NFL. Everybody is healthy. Everson Griffin should be back to his normal self. He could get double-digit sacks this year. And that's a defense that's capable of shutting down Matt Ryan. In fact, in 2017, the Vikings shut him down. He only threw 173 yards, 0 touchdown passes. So once again, a very tough matchup from there. Yet Ryan has been very good 2 of the last 3 years. He's got great weapons. You look, he's loaded. You look at Devontae Freeman as a running back who's got great hands on the backfield, very elusive when he gets out there in traffic or when he gets out there in open space. You got Julio Jones, one of the best wide receivers really of this generation. You got a rising star in Calvin Ridley. You got Hooper is a solid tight end. It makes it very hard to sit Matt Ryan even in a tough matchup. So I would start him as a fair play. Now, typically Ryan would be top 10, even top 5 at times. But this week he's going to be around the 12 to 15 range for us. They're right on the bubble of a guy that you can start, but you need to lower your expectations. Kirk Cousins. So the Atlanta's pass defense was not good last year. They had some injuries. They are going to rebound. They're going to make some improvement this year there. Kirk Cousins is underrated. I can't believe how far he is falling in drafts. And a lot of people talked about the down year that he had, a down year that produced 30 touchdown passes, a career best for him. And he's got great weapons. Now he's playing at home. These weapons, think about this. Diggs, Thielen, Rudolph, Dalvin Cook. This guy is a solid start this week. Start Kirk Cousins and feel good about it. He's going to have a good week at home versus the Falcons there. Let's look at running back. Start with Dalvin Cook. Last year, he was getting healthy. The last 5 games, he was explosive. He had a 5.69 yards per carry. He's used frequently in passing situations. This is a running back that is top 10, running back 1 that you need to start this week. Talk about Ito Smith. You look at Devontae Freeman. He's smaller. The last couple of years, had a hard time staying healthy. Coleman is now gone. I think Ito Smith's going to carve out a role for him in this. He's going to have some fantasy value, just not in week 1. He's got a tough matchup. And right now, because Freeman's healthy, I would sit Ito Smith. Devontae Freeman does have a tough matchup. Usually the issue for him is being healthy, staying healthy. But coming out of preseason, he's perfectly healthy. He's good to go. That's not an issue for him. He does have a tough matchup. I would start him as a running back 2 this week. Wide receivers, Adam Thielen. He was drafted by many to be a wide receiver 1. Now he will have some tough matchups, but even in the toughest matchup, he's still a guy that you're going to start. Even in the toughest matchup, he's still a wide receiver 2. This week, you start him as a wide receiver 1. That's kind of a no-brainer. Stephon Diggs. I would start Stephon as a wide receiver 2 with wide receiver 1 talent and big upside there. He's a guy that's very talented. And there's Julio Jones. So he may see a lot of Xavier Rhodes, who at his best, when he's playing well and he's healthy, Xavier Rhodes can be a shutdown corner, and he's actually won some matchups versus Julio Jones in the past. But come on, you're insane if you're thinking about sitting Julio Jones, right? Don't get cute, play the matchups. Start Julio Jones. Doesn't matter who he's playing. Doesn't matter who the corner is. You're going to play Julio Jones, right?
Absolutely. That seems pretty straightforward to me.
Yeah, don't be that guy, because there's always that one guy that gets cute, okay?
Unless you're playing me, then feel free to take the chance.
Yes. Calvin Ridley. This one's difficult for me. He had a great rookie season, 10 touchdowns. But if you look at last year, he ran very hot or cold. Now he's on the road against a very good Vikings team. Now he could see easier matchups because we know that Julio Jones will get a lot of attention from that defense there. But he also could run the risk of having lower targets and end up with 3 catches for 45 yards. So we just don't know. So I would start him as a wide receiver 3. Okay, I would sit him if in your league that's under 12 teams. If you're in the league 12 or over, then I would start him as a wide receiver 3. That's kind of where I'm at with him. Kyle Rudolph. We said the last 2 years, Kyle is overrated. He'll have 1 or 2 good games for you. Otherwise, he's nothing more than a plug and play. And I'm a Vikings fan, but the numbers are very clear. This guy's overrated. I hope you have better options. Sit Kyle Rudolph if you can afford to do that. Austin Hooper. Doesn't get a ton of red zone targets. He doesn't stretch the field. He's not very fast, so his yards after catch aren't good. That lowers his standard value. I would sit in standard leagues if you can afford to do that. Okay. Obviously, I don't know who you have out there for options. Now, last year he was 4th in catches in the league amongst tight ends, so that was good. And he does have solid hands. So I think he's not top 10, but he can be started in PPR leagues if you're 12 teams or larger. As far as kickers go, you got Dan Bailey. In theory, Dan Bailey in theory is in a good situation here. Then you have Matt Bryant, who's brought back. I think both kickers are decent, but not great plays this week. Vikings defense, I would start with lower expectations, and I would sit the Falcons defense.
All right, guys, so here we come. We got the Bills versus the Jets. This is going to be an interesting game. We'll start off, as always, with the quarterbacks. And what about Josh Allen? Now, I know they made some major improvements, the Bills did, to their offensive line. And people are getting a little bit excited about Josh Allen. And yet, he still doesn't have a receiving core, a tight end that I like. They just got rid of LaShawn McCoy, their best running back receiving out of the backfield. This is a quarterback you have to sit this week. On the other side, we see Josh Allen. Josh Allen, I like this matchup against the Bills. While the Bills were one of the best pass defenses in the NFL last year statistically, that was simply because teams weren't passing against them because their offense was so bad. So those numbers were skewed a bit. If you're in a deep league, if you're in a 2-quarterback league or a 16-team league, he squeaks in there at that 15-16 sort of area as a barely guy who gets in there as a starter. But other than that, Sam Darnold is not a guy to start at quarterback. We move on to the running backs now. Let's go to Buffalo. We have Mike Singletary and Frank Gore. While I'm very hyped on Mike Singletary, I'm very excited to see what he can do. This is a guy that I don't think that you can play despite his upside. Week 1, we just have to see what's going on. And in fact, I've heard multiple reports that Frank Gore is set to be the lead back for that offense. That right there is I don't know what to say, interesting, a joke, I don't know what, but I think you got to sit both these guys. I don't know what you're going to do in this situation, but none of these guys have huge fantasy value, and I don't trust either of them. You want to play Frank Gore with low upside, or do you want to play a guy like Mike Singletary who might only get 5 carries? Either way, you got to steer clear. On the other side, you have to start Le'Veon Bell. While I have talked all season about how I think this guy's a little bit overrated, it surprises me that he's a first-round pick. He's clearly going to be at least an RB2 this season, and so I think you have to play him, especially in PPR leagues. I'm excited to see how the Jets are going to use him in the passing game. Speaking of the passing game, I like Robbie Anderson as a wide receiver 3, low wide receiver 2. You got to play him. He really started to get hot at the end of last season when Sam Darnold started to improve as a quarterback. He's the clear-cut number 1 wideout in that offense. You should definitely play him. The next best wide receiver for the Jets is Jamison Crowder. He is not worth playing. In fact, in most leagues, he's not even worth a roster spot unless you have a deep league. Moving on to the other side, we've got a pretty bad situation as far as wideouts goes. The really only wide receiver to note for the Bills at this point is John Brown. John Brown, if you're in a very deep league and you're desperate, yeah, he's going to maybe crack some lineups, but he's not, or excuse me, he's going to crack some rosters. He's going to get on some teams, but he's not worth a play this week, at least until we see what he can do. Maybe 5 weeks from now we change our mind. There's always a wide receiver in a bad offense who surprises us, but I don't expect that to be the case, especially this week. As far as tight ends go, for the Jets, they have tight end Chris Herndon, and while I like Chris Herndon, he's suspended. So this is a guy who 8 weeks from now, I think he could actually have some moderate fantasy value and fill some holes for some teams that are lacking at the tight end position, but he won't be playing for the first 4 weeks. On the other side, we have tight end Tyler Kroft. I would sit him. I don't trust him. As far as the tight ends go, you got to sit Bills kicker Steven Hauschka. I don't trust that offense to get him down to kick field goals. And you got to sit the Jets' Kerr Vedvik. I mean, when the Vikings just released him because he was missing field goals, you really have to be concerned with his performance. I don't like either of these defenses, but if you had to play one, I'd say that you have to play the Jets' defense over the Bills, but I probably wouldn't start either.
Redskins versus the Eagles. Start with Case Keenum. We said back when he left Minnesota after having a good year and went to Denver, people were hyped on him, and we said stay away from the guy. Sure enough, he had a very bad year. This situation's even worse now. Worse weapons, worse O-line. You need to sit Case Keenum. Carson Wentz. The strength of the Redskins team is really their defense, but that doesn't say a whole lot. I think Carson's poised for a big year there. I think he's a solid play this week. I think a week of 20, 50 yards, 2 touchdowns are a safe floor. I do think he has a limited ceiling in this game a little bit there because the Redskins defense is not bad. They're actually a pretty solid defense there. As far as running backs go in this game, this is full of what I call speculation and coach speak, right? There's a lot of these comments, what can you really take from coach speak? Start with Darius Geis. Coach said that we're going to feed him. How much? Last year, Adrian Peterson was so effective. Does he really sit Adrian? I just think Adrian's going to get some touches there, but how many touches? The O-line is not in a good place right now. The Washington Redskins O-line's got some question marks. And I think it's also easy to assume in this game that they're going to have to be playing from behind trying to catch the Eagles, and they're going to have to abandon the run to play catch up late in the game there. So for me, Darius is a running back 3 in week 1. Unless you're desperate, I would sit him. Okay, we need to see how effective he is, and we need to see the snap count distribution, exactly what that's going to look like. I think the guy that I actually like of these backs is Chris Thompson, if you're in PPR leagues. Got very good hands. He's effective in passing situations. I think in this game, as they're trying to catch up the Eagles and have to throw the ball later in the game, I think he's going to get 7 to 8 targets, 6 or 7 carries. I think if he started as a flex play in PPR leagues only, I would sit Adrian Peterson. What about Miles Sanders? Praised by the coaches, but Philadelphia just put an offer in for Gordon, trade offer, now got rejected there. Some said they were just testing the waters, wasn't a realistic offer. It really makes me wonder how much Coach Peterson feels confident with his backs. Now they traded for Howard. They're not just going to give up on him. They're going to give some opportunities. And Howard's a big physical back who will get a lot of first and second down carries, but he is limited in the passing game. And I think Miles Sanders' role is going to grow in that offense. Sanders is he really has the makings of 2-3 down back there. I think he can do some big things. Can he be trusted week 1? I don't think so. In fact, Coach Peterson came out and said that Sanders might have a big role. I don't know about you, but I don't want to trust might in week 1. I need to know. I want to have more confidence. So for me, he's a running back 3-4. Based on your league size, I would sit Miles Sanders. Jordan Howard, sit in PPR leagues for sure. He's got hands issues, not great in the passing game. I think he's going to etch out this year. I think Howard could do this, etch out some standard value. But Coach Peterson's comments, and if you look at the past couple of years, how the Eagles have used their backs, make it very difficult to trust any back right now in that offense. I would sit him too. As far as wide receivers go, I would sit all Washington Redskins wide receivers. I think one's going to emerge there as a guy that you can use from week to week based on matchup, but none can be trusted week 1. As far as the Eagles go, Deshaun Jackson, playing with a broken left ring finger. He's a home run hitter. He's capable of huge games, but he's not a possession receiver, so he's also capable of laying an egg for you. For me, he's a wide receiver 4. I would sit in this game. You have Alshon Jeffrey, very talented. Due to injuries to him, the quarterback, and some other factors, he went from a once promising wide receiver 1 to now a wide receiver 2. In this matchup, you got Josh Norman, you got Landon Collins. So for me, he drops down to a wide receiver 3. I would start him. Most dependable targets of all their weapons are going to be Ertz and Dallas Goedert in this game. And so I think those are the guys where they're going to get fed a lot of targets in this one. As far as tight ends go, Jordan Reed remain in concussion protocol as of Wednesday. Maybe he'll be ready for the game, maybe he won't. He's been very a guy that you can't really trust. He hasn't been very dependable the last couple of years. So even if he does play, for me, he's not in the top 12. I would sit him. Zach Ertz, he's a top 5 must start. Now, I do think Dallas Goedert is going to chip away at his role and get some of those targets. Doesn't matter, Zach Ertz. Even if he lowers his number, he's still a guy that you got to play every week there. He's got good rapport with Carson Wentz. As far as kickers go, start Jake Elliott. I would sit Hopkins. He's an average kicker in a below average offense. Start the Eagles defense and sit the Redskins defense.
All right, guys, so here I'm excited to talk about the Rams versus the Panthers. I'm excited because there's actually some pretty easy information for me to deliver to you guys. For example, we'll start off with the quarterbacks as always. Jared Goff. Start him. He's got one of the best wide receiving corps in the NFL, and Todd Gurley out of the backfield. That's an obvious start. On the other hand, I probably wouldn't start Cam Newton unless you're in a 2-quarterback league or you're in a 16-team league or maybe you're just desperate, whatever. I probably avoid starting him if you can, although I certainly understand there's situations where you're going to have to. This guy has been banged up with a shoulder injury and ankle injury. I don't love his receiving corps. Of course, McCaffrey out of the backfield is pretty good, but other than that, you've got a moderate DJ Moore wide receiver, but Greg Olsen's aging, and I don't think he's an amazing start. And so I think that you should sit this guy. They're going to lean on their running game and hopefully try to stop the Rams from scoring a lot of points. That's really going to be their game plan, and if they succeed at all, Cam Newton is not going to have a good fantasy day. Move on to the running backs. These are 2 easy, solid options right here. Todd Gurley and Christian McCaffrey, you have to play both of them. You got to start these guys. You just do. Now, I know there's some minor concerns with the arthritis issues in the knee, the problems with Todd Gurley. That will be an issue probably later on in the season. I do understand your concern, but that is not a problem now. He seems to be healthy. Move on to the wide receivers. What about Cooper Kupp? You got to play this guy. All reports are saying that he's completely healthy, he's 100%, he's back in shape, and he's playing week 1. You got to play this guy. He's the best wide receiver in that offense. Brandon Cooks and Robert Woods, those are low-end wide receiver plays. I think you have to start them, but you have to start them understanding that they're a flex play or they're a wide receiver 3, right? And just understand that because they're not that number 1 wideout like Cooper Kupp is. On the other side, we go over here to the Panthers, and I think that DJ Moore is the guy that you should play in PPR leagues. Understand he's got a ceiling because I don't love that offense, and I don't think he's going to have an absolutely monster day. He's a very talented wide receiver, and he's probably going to be the number 1 target for Cam Newton, so especially in PPR leagues, you should play him. I think you should sit Curtis Samuel. People are getting excited about him, and I understand that. He's a very talented guy, but we need to see a game or a couple of games, some sort of sign of what he can really be that we can trust him. We haven't had that yet. We go to tight ends. You got to sit Rams tight end Tyler Higbee, and I suggest that you actually start Greg Olsen. And this is one of those reasons where I don't love Greg Olsen, but with the very lacking depth, the very lacking talent at the tight end position, Greg Olsen's got to come in at least as a top 12 in that 10 to 12 range for tight ends this week. So I think you should probably play him, of course, unless you have a better option. As far as the kickers go, I think that you should start kicker Greg Zuerlein. He is in the best fantasy situation for a kicker. Got to be hands down. And as far as just to catch everybody up what's going on, Panthers kicker Graham Gano was placed on the IR and will not be playing this season, so don't start any kickers for the Panthers. We don't even know 100% what's going on there and have yet to see their backup kick. So then we go on to the defenses just to hurry this up. Rams, I think you got to play them. They're very talented, one of the most physically talented. They've got a real roster of guys there. I think they could absolutely capitalize on playing the Panthers this week in a banged up Cam Newton. And I think that you should sit the Panthers defense against a solid Rams offense.
Chiefs versus the Jaguars. Start with Pat Mahomes. I could give you stats versus the Jaguars last year's metrics. Talk about players. You got to be high if you think about sitting this guy. Okay, start the league MVP. That's a no-brainer, right? Let's talk about Nick Foles. A big upgrade over Blake Bortles. We said that last year. We told you to stay away from Blake Bortles. The guy was a bust. And I think if Foles in this game, Nick Foles is going to be playing catch-up in this one. Obviously, they're going to fall behind. He's probably going to have to throw a lot. And the Chiefs' defensive backs are not good. So this is actually a nice matchup play for Nick Foles. So if you're in a league, if let's say you're in a real need, or if you're in a league where you play 2 quarterbacks, I think you could start him in this one there. I would say this, though, even though it's a good matchup for Foles, he's still well outside the top 15. So you'd have to be, once again, in a desperate situation or in a 2-quarterback league, something like that. As far as running backs go, Damian Williams. After the McCoy signing, man, his stock is plummeting. I loved him. I don't love him anymore. But I think he can be trusted in week 1, and here's why. I would start him in week 1 as a running back 2 with good upside. McCoy is going to have to come in. He's going to have to learn the offensive playbook. Yes, I know he's familiar with Andy Reid's system. I get that. But every offense has differences and nuances. So I would sit McCoy week 1. And I would start Damian Williams in the week 1. I think you can trust Damian this week. Afterwards, we'll have to see what happens there. Look at Leonard Fournette. Reports are his head's on straight. He came in great shape. And I know that the Jaguars are going to want to give him 20, 25 carries, control the clock, and keep the ball out of Pat Mahomes' hands. Unfortunately, game script might dictate otherwise. I would start him as a low-end running back too. As far as wide receivers go, you got Tyreek Hill. Ramsey probably make things hard for him. In fact, last year, he had a pretty quiet game, 4 catches, 61 yards. That drops him out of wide receiver 1 consideration, but you still start Hill as a wide receiver 2. He's too good, and Pat Mahomes is great, so you need to start him. As far as Sammy Watkins go, you got Kelsey, Hill, Williams there. He's really like 3rd or 4th as far as targets go. And even though I like Sammy, he's playing a good defense. I need to sit him right now. He's a wide receiver 4 in this matchup. D.D. Westbrook. Been getting a lot of praises from coaches. His average draft position is rising quick the last few weeks. And he's in a game where they need to throw the ball a lot. I could see him getting 8 to 12 targets in this one as they try to play catch up with the Chiefs there. Start as a wide receiver 2. The other Jags wide receivers, you got Lee and Conley. Lee's a wide receiver 4 and Conley's a wide receiver 5. I would sit them. Travis Kelce, start. He's Pat Mahomes' most dependable target. He's number 1 fantasy tight end right now. Need to start him. I would sit all Jags tight ends. Swain is probably the guy that you look for there, but once again, he's not worth starting in this one. Start kicker Butker. Nail up Josh Lambo. So start Butker, and then Lambo. He's worth a start as a low-end kicker play if you have to. I would sit both defenses if you can afford to. If I had to put my money on a defense in this one, it'd actually be Kansas City. I don't think they're a good defense, but I think they'll get ahead. And they'll get some interception sacks, things like that, as Jags play a little bit of catch-up. So I would try to sit both. If you got to go with one, I guess Kansas City's the slight nod I would give.
All right, guys, so now we have the Colts versus the Chargers. We're getting these quarterbacks. First one I'm going to talk about is Jacoby Brissett. I'm going to talk about him first because I'm just going to say sit him. That's a clear option. You got to not put this guy in. You got to keep him benched. On the other side, we see Phillip Rivers. I think you got to start this guy. I think he is in a prime situation against a Colts defense that is probably a little bit below average as far as pass defense goes. And the fact that Melvin Gordon is out actually benefits him. That's because they're going to have a weakened running game and be forced to throw the ball more. He's going to throw the ball a lot. And his number 1 running back this game, who's going to be Austin Eckler, is a pass-catching back. So that is going to be a pass-heavy offense this week. So I really like Rivers. We go on the other side. I like Marlon Mack in standard leagues more than I like PPR leagues. I think you got to play Marlon Mack as a running back too. As much as that offense is absolutely hurt by Andrew Luck being gone, what are you going to do? You got a better running back than Marlon Mack? I doubt it. I doubt you got a better running back too. You certainly might. I know that there are definitely teams, especially in keeper leagues out there, who do. However, I think for a lot of you, he's going to find a way in, either be it through the flex or maybe you just don't have a great RB2. On the other side, you got to play Austin Eckler in PPR leagues. It changes a little bit in standard, but he definitely finds his way in as a flex or a weak RB2 or whatever it might be. As long as Gordon isn't playing, Austin Eckler has fantasy value. That much we know. We don't know exactly how much and how many carries he's going to be able to get this season, what he's going to be able to handle, but we know he has value, and that's what counts. Keenan Allen is a must start. I think Mike Williams is a must start as a wide receiver 2 or 3 as well. On the other side, as much as I don't like T.Y. Hilton, I think you still have to play him. I think that he certainly loses some value without Andrew Luck, but the last season he played without Andrew Luck, he was still a top 20 fantasy wideout. I think that speaks volumes. Paris Campbell, young rookie wide receiver for the Colts. I'm excited to see who he can do. We were big on him until Andrew Luck retired, but this is a guy you got to sit. We need to wait and see what he can do. He has more dynasty value than he does redraft value, and that's really important to note the difference. As far as the tight ends go, we got 2 actually really good tight ends. You got to start Hunter Henry. This guy's shown all the talent in the world, and that offense is going to be passing more than they would have. And then Eric Ebron. I'm not as huge on Eric Ebron as I was with Andrew Luck there. However, did you draft a better tight end than Eric Ebron and also have Eric Ebron? I doubt it. I find he's going to be a situation where he's not an amazing play, but in that 8 to 12 range at tight end is probably where he falls this week, and so I think you should play him. As far as the kickers go, I think that you should start kicker Michael Badgley. He benefits from being in a good offense that's probably going to struggle in the red zone due to losing Melvin Gordon. I think he's in a great situation. I think you should sit Adam Vinatieri. He's an old kicker in a bad offense that I don't trust. Well, I think the Colts are a risky start. If you want to take a gamble, they actually finished from weeks 10 onward. They allowed just 16.4 points per game. That was 10th in the NFL last year. However, it's a new season, and that is a very risky play. So unless you are looking to stream this week because you don't trust your defense, I would not play the Colts. As far as the Chargers, they are a medium to low end start. You can play them if you want, but I wouldn't expect anything monstrous from them.
Bengals versus Seahawks. Start with Russell Wilson. Great start against a very bad defense. Cincinnati's going to look to make defensive improvements this year, obviously. In the last few years, they've been the bottom third in the NFL. Last season, they were last in pass defense and third to last in points allowed at 28.4. Start with Russell Wilson. Andy Dalton. Seattle's D-line is reloaded. I was getting wrong. Ezekiel. I was torch this guy's name from Detroit.
Ezekiel Ansah.
Thank you. And then they got Jadeveon Clowney they traded for. And now Dalton's going to be facing them in the loudest stadium in NFL on opening day with his best wide receiver, A.J. Green, out. Sit Dalton. Running back, Chris Carson, clear number back. He's a clear number one guy in that offense. There was some idea, some talk in the offseason that maybe Penny would have a bigger role, and he may still. But Chris Carson has distanced himself right now. He's a clear number one guy there against a very bad run defense. In fact, the run defense was 29th in the NFL last year. I would start Carson as a high-end running back too. Sit Penny until we see exactly what his usage is going to be. Joe Mixon. In a very tough matchup, he's a running back 1, but this week he lands as a running back 2. You can start him. He's got a safe floor but a lower ceiling. Tyler Lockett. Starting a great matchup. He's a solid wide receiver 2. You need to play him there. And then Metcalf. I think Metcalf's going to be a legitimate stud. I think he's got all the makings to be a very good wide receiver, but he's missed time coming off of knee procedure. Can't go higher than a wide receiver 4 this week. I would sit him. Once again, hasn't been there, hasn't developed timing, got some issues to work on, so I think you need to sit him. As far as Tyler Boyd, right there with A.J. Green out, start as a wide receiver 2. Sit all tight ends in this matchup. I would sit kicker Bullock. I would start kicker Myers as a decent but not great play. I would sit Cincinnati's defense, and you need to start Seattle's defense in this one. So.
All right, so here we come to the Giants versus the Cowboys. I don't know about you, Rob, but this is one of the games I'm really excited for this week. I don't know what it is, but I'm excited. For those of you who don't know, at the quarterback position, Eli Manning was named the Week 1 starter. That much we know. I guess that could change. However, he wasn't a good fantasy option last year, and he lost Odell Beckham. That tells me you definitely don't want to start him against actually a fairly decent Dallas Cowboys defense. I think that you should start Dak Prescott if you have him. I think he's going to really take advantage of this week and be able to. I think he's excited. I think it's going to be a good offense with Ezekiel Elliott back, so that's huge news. Speaking of Elliott, you got to start Ezekiel Elliott, and you've got to start Saquon Barkley. Those are so obvious right now. I'm not even going to get into it. As far as the wide receivers go, let's start with Amari Cooper. You got to start Amari Cooper. The way he played last season, you want to look at those metrics, those numbers. I'm not going to waste time breaking it down. He's a must start. While we've heard some really positive news about Michael Gallup developing as a wide receiver, we just don't know how he'll play. Don't play him this week, but definitely keep him on your radar and just watch to see how he performs. He could certainly develop into a low-end wide receiver 3. On the other side, I think you got to start Sterling Shepard, especially in PPR leagues. He's the number 1 wide receiver in that offense, and you got to imagine he's going to get a boatload of targets. At the tight end position, you absolutely have to play Evan Ingram. He is our number 4 fantasy tight end heading into this season, so we like him a lot. And I think that you should sit Jason Witten. He is old. I don't trust him. He wasn't a great fantasy option before he retired, and he retired, and now he's back. It's this whole weird situation. As far as the kickers go, I think that you should sit Giants kicker Aldrick Rosas, and you should start Dallas kicker Brett Maher. I think he's actually got a pretty good matchup this week. I would sit the Giants defense this week. Dallas has a conservative and above average offense. And you know what? If you're looking for a plug and play defense, the Cowboys might be the defense this week, but it's certainly a low end plug and play.
Lions versus the Cardinals there. Start with Matthew Stafford. Look at the Lions. They're being rebuilt. Patricia's kind of an old school guy, okay? His idea is they want to play defense and run the ball. So even with Patrick Peterson out there, I really can't justify starting Matthew Stafford in this one there. As far as Kyler Murray, I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid. I don't know what it is about this guy. People love him to death. I'm simply not going to drink it. Look at Baker Mayfield last year. Best ever season as a rookie quarterback. Yet it took him 6 or 7 games to hit on all cylinders. Now he's playing the Lions. First week in the NFL, okay? He's going to see a lot of wrinkles, things he's never saw in college, things he didn't see in the preseason. And the Lions' defense last year were 8th in pass defense. They were pretty solid there. Now, you had the fact that Murray struggled in the preseason. You need to sit him. He's got a rookie coach, Cliff Kingsbury. Yeah, he's going to try some innovative things, but he's been untested in the NFL. We don't know how some of those college tricks are going to really translate to the NFL. if you play Kyler Murray, yes, you may roll the dice and come up big, or you could come up dead this week, and I would stay away from him. As far as running backs go, you got Kerryon Johnson. All signs point to this guy up. Everything's trending. I love this guy. I love him more and more. I think he's very solid. Start him as a running back too. David Johnson. This offense may hamstring him again this year. He may have problems just like he did last year when the offense struggled. But it doesn't matter because even last year he was still a good volume play. He finished 9th in running back scoring in PPR leagues, so start David Johnson as a running back too. In fact, I think they're going to give him a lot of carries to take pressure off that rookie quarterback. As far as wide receiver, you got Larry Johnson, future Hall of Famer, great. You got young, explosive wide receiver, Christian Kirk. Larry's a wide receiver 4 until we see exactly how this offense is going to roll and what's going to happen there. And I think Christian Kirk is a wide receiver 5, a guy that you stash on your bench, you watch and see how this weekend goes. Kenny Golladay, clear number 1 wide receiver for the Lions there. Patrick Peterson is out, so that makes him a nice wide receiver 2 start this weekend. Does Danny Amendola take over Golden Tate's role? Time will tell. I say no. And then you got Marvin Jones. Does he rebound? I think he'll rebound a little bit this year, but I think you sit both of those guys. Jones is wide receiver 4 and Danny Amendola is a wide receiver 5. Tight end Hawkinson, all the talk about him, this guy's doing great, but historically speaking, rookie tight ends don't produce good fantasy lines. We talked about in some of our videos, we gave some lines, some metrics, things like that. I would sit him week 1. He needs to prove it. We need to prove it there before we can trust some of that hype. I would sit all his own tight ends. Matt Prater is a solid play this week. I would sit the Cardinals kicker, start the Lions defense, and sit the Cardinals defense in this one.
All right, guys, so now we've got 49ers versus the Buccaneers. First things first, Jimmy G, you got to sit this guy. He's had a brutal preseason, and I don't trust him. I got to believe there is a lot of other and much better quarterback options out there. One of them this week being the underrated Jameis Winston, who's playing against a below-average 49ers defense. I think that's a start you absolutely have to make. I think you got to start Jameis Winston this week. As far as the running backs go, I wrestled with this one back and forth for quite a while, but Matt Breida, I think this is a guy that comes in, he plays flex a little bit, maybe a weak RB2 or a running back 3 more confidently. I'm not huge on him, but if you're looking for a running back this week, this could be the guy if you're not sure whether or not to play him. He plays against the Bucs defense, which was last in the NFL at stopping the run last season. He was recently named the 49ers starting running back, so there's a lot of good news there, but man, that is a risky play. So I tell you what, guys, if you're considering starting Matt Breida, this is absolutely one to drop a comment down below and let us know your situation so we can really wrestle through the individual roster that you have or the individual players that you've got. On the other side, I think you should sit Peyton Barber. I just don't like him. I don't like that running situation at all. The wide receivers go, you got to start Mike Evans and you got to start Chris Godwin. Of course, Mike Evans is the number 1. He's a wide receiver 1 this week, and Evans comes in as a solid wide receiver 2. I think you got to start Dante Pettis. I think he's a solid wide receiver 2 or 3 this week for sure. I think you should play him. People were really surprised recently when he was named the 49ers number 1 wide receiver. We weren't surprised. That's something we expected all offseason long. You got to start George Kittle, and you got to start O.J. Howard. Those are very talented tight ends. We go to the kickers, Robbie Gould and Matt Gay. I would sit both of them. I don't like either of those kickers, especially this week. And I would actually sit both defenses. Those are both very unimpressive defenses.
Patriots and Steelers, this is going to be a fun game to watch, honestly. Forget fantasy aside. This should be a good game to sit down and enjoy it. Look at Tom Brady. I think this game could and should be a high-scoring affair there. Brady has his weapons ready. Edelman's back for a full year. You're going to have Josh Gordon for a full season. Yes, he's missing Gronkowski, okay. But you got White there, running back, and others. I think they're going to fill in nicely. I would start Tom Brady in this game. Ben Roethlisberger, we predict another 30-touchdown passing season this year. Doesn't matter that Antonio Brown is gone. In fact, you're hearing news today about Antonio Brown is going to get suspended probably. Just probably good for that team that he is gone. As far as running backs go, James Conner starts as a running back 1. He's due for a monster season there. Now, Jalen Samuels, a lot of speculation as to his role, but there's a lot of uncertainty, so I think he's a guy that you need to sit this weekend until we have more definitive evidence as far as exactly what his role is going to be in that offense there. You have James White, start the PPR stud. This guy's a PPR stud. He's what I would call a high-end running back 2 in PPR leagues and standards. He's a running back 3. That's Sony Michel. I would start as a low-end running back 2 in PPRs, and he's a strong running back 2 in standards. You have Julian Edelman. Julian Edelman is what I would call a PPR specialist. So he's a very good wide receiver 2 in PPR leagues. He drops to wide receiver 3 in standards. Then you have Josh Gordon. I would start as a wide receiver 3, regardless of your scoring system. I think he's going to land as wide receiver 3, no matter which one it is. As far as tight ends go, you have Vance McDonald. Jesse James is gone. I think makes Vance a very nice tight end start this year. He could bump up there. He could finish the year with 50, 60 catches, 800 to 900 yards there. I would start him. I would sit all Pat's tight ends right now. As As far as kickers go, Gostkowski is a high-end start, and Boswell is a fair start, not great but fair. And I would sit both defenses in this one.
All right, so we've got Texans versus Saints. I'm calling it right now. This is probably going to be the most interesting game of week 1. This is the game I'm most excited to watch. And I think you got to play both quarterbacks. You're going to sit Drew Brees or Deshaun Watson? Absolutely not. These are 2 top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. As far as the running backs go, you're going to start Alvin Kamara. Obviously, gets a little bit shaky when you go to the Texans. What are you going to do? I think that Duke Johnson in PPR leagues is a running back 2, and in standard leagues is a running back 3 to 4. So I probably wouldn't start him in standard so much as I would in PPR leagues. And then Carlos Hyde, this is a guy that could have some standard league value and could fill a desperate roster spot. However, this week I'm going to say sit him if you can avoid it. Move on to the wide receivers. Guys, you're going to start Michael Thomas and you're going to start DeAndre Hopkins. Those are really obvious picks. In fact, I say you start Will Fuller as well as a wide receiver 3. Is a big-time matchup against a good Saints offense. I imagine the Texans are going to have to put up some big points to win that game, and so I think you got to play Will Fuller. And you got to start Jared Cook, and I think that you have to sit the Houston Texans tight end. Excuse me, we'll move on, keep things going here. But the kicker is Kaimi Fairbairn. I'm definitely saying that wrong, but at this point I don't even care. I think you should start him, and you should start kicker Will Lutz. I think they're 2 good kickers and good offenses that aren't afraid to kick field goals. We've seen that in the past. I think you should sit the Houston Texans defense, and you should start the Saints defense. Get this. The Saints allowed just 16.9 fantasy points per game from weeks 10 onward last year. That was 3rd best in the NFL. The second half of last season, they were quietly one of the best defenses in the NFL. They could absolutely get some huge fantasy points this game.
To our final game of the week, Broncos versus the Raiders. Start with Joe Flacco. Just not worth starting this guy. He's going to be a game manager. Now, he's going to be better than Case Keenum, but doesn't say a whole lot there. Rarely he's going to have fantasy value. He could be a plug-and-play in right matchups. Derek Carr, I think he's going to surprise a lot of people. In the first 3 seasons, he showed a lot of promise. I think Grier's going to get back on track. In my notes, I said Brown gives him a legitimate stud there, but it sounds like, now he might get suspended, but it sounds to me like they may just have it be done with Antonio Brown. We need to watch that situation closely. But in this game here against Miller and Chubb and that Denver defense who can get after it, now looks like he's not going to have his top wide receiver. You need to sit Derek Carr there. As far as running backs go, Josh Jacobs, I would start as a running back 2. And then you have Philip Lindsay and Royce Freeman. We actually expect big things from Freeman this year, but I want a prove-it game. So I would sit Freeman in week 1. I would start Lindsay as a low-end running back 2 start. He's got a safer floor in PPR leagues. Antonio Brown, they may just not suspend him. He may end up playing. Here's the problem with that. We just won't know, and it's a Monday game, so you can't scramble to start somebody else if last second something goes haywire. So I think you just need to sit him and make plans otherwise. But Tyrell Williams benefits from that. He goes and he becomes a solid wide receiver 2 in this game. He's about the only legitimate wide receiver there that Derek Carr can trust. Emmanuel Sanders, I would start as a wide receiver 3 in leagues over 12 teams. I think we need to wait and see who emerges as far as those other Denver wide receivers are. A lot of those wide receivers have showed promise, but none of them are locks at this point. You can speculate all that you want, but you don't know. Last year, just when you think we pinned it down, right, you get locked in on that wide receiver, and then all of a sudden next week another guy would come out, gobble targets, have a big game. We need to wait and see. As far as tight ends go, I know a lot of people are liking Waller. Yeah, he's a sleeper. Yes, he's got upside, but he's not proven. You need to sit him week 1, and we need to see what he does. Sit all Broncos tight ends. I would sit kicker Carlson and start McManus if need be. I would sit the Raiders defense, and I would start the Broncos defense in this one. There we go. Excited the football's back.
Well, that was quite a long video, but hey, we got through all of it. That's all the games. We're excited. You guys have to let us know what you think of everything that happens this week. As always, leave a comment if you have any questions. If we didn't talk enough about a player, you want some more information about a guy we just didn't talk about at all. But hopefully that really helped you guys out. As always, guys, we want to say, thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate your support.